War between superpowers is a terrifying thought. It's easy to imagine. We've seen it in movies, but the reality is far more complex and terrifying. A war between the United States and China would be unlike anything the world has ever seen. It wouldn't be a quick fight, there would be no clear winner, and the consequences would be felt by every single person on this planet. The truth is, we can't predict the outcome of such a war with any certainty. There are too many factors at play, but what we can do is analyze the potential risks, the likely scenarios, and the devastating consequences. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge will push us towards a more peaceful future. The United States has long been considered the world's dominant military power. It has a global reach, with bases and troops stationed around the world. The US Navy is unmatched and its Air Force is technologically advanced. China, on the other hand, has been rapidly modernizing its military. It has invested heavily in new technologies, including hypersonic missiles and artificial intelligence. While the US still holds an edge in terms of overall military power, the gap is closing. China has a clear advantage in sheer numbers. It has the largest standing army in the world, and its industrial capacity is immense. This means that in a prolonged conflict, China could potentially outproduce and outlast the United States. Both the United States and China possess nuclear weapons. This fact alone makes a full-scale war between them highly unlikely. The use of nuclear weapons would result in catastrophic consequences, with millions, if not billions, of casualties. This is the terrifying reality of mutually assured destruction. However, the existence of nuclear weapons does not guarantee peace. Miscalculation, accidents, or the escalation of a conventional conflict could all lead to a nuclear exchange. The risk, while small, is simply too great to ignore. The international community must work tirelessly to prevent such a scenario. The economic consequences of a US-China war would be devastating. The two countries are deeply intertwined economically. China is America's largest trading partner, and the US is China's second largest. A war would disrupt global supply chains, leading to shortages, inflation, and economic chaos. The global economy is already fragile. A war between these two economic powerhouses would plunge the world into a deep recession. Millions would lose their jobs, businesses would collapse, and the social fabric of nations would be strained to the breaking point. Section 5, Allies and Partnerships, drawing the battle lines. A war between the United States and China would not be confined to those two countries. Alliances and partnerships would come into play, drawing other nations into the conflict. The United States has formal alliances with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. China has been strengthening its ties with Russia, Pakistan, and several countries in Southeast Asia. These alliances could quickly turn a regional conflict into a global war. The potential for escalation is enormous, and once the fighting starts, it can be very difficult to contain. Section 6, Cyber Warfare, the invisible battlefield. In the 21st century, warfare is no longer confined to land, sea, and air. Cyber warfare has emerged as a major threat. Both the US and China have sophisticated cyber capabilities. They could use these capabilities to disrupt each other's critical infrastructure, steal sensitive information, and sow chaos and confusion. A cyber attack could cripple a nation's economy, disrupt its military operations, or even sow widespread panic. And unlike conventional attacks, cyber attacks are difficult to attribute. This makes them a particularly dangerous tool in the hands of state actors. Section 7, The High Cost of Conflict, a World in Chaos. A war between the US and China would be a global catastrophe. Millions would die, the global economy would collapse, the environment would suffer irreparable damage, and the social and political fabric of the world would be torn apart. The costs of war are simply too high. We cannot afford to let competition between nations escalate into conflict. We must find a better way forward. Section 8, The Path Forward, Diplomacy and Dialogue. The only way to prevent a catastrophic war between the US and China is through diplomacy and dialogue. The two countries must find ways to manage their differences, address their concerns, and build trust. This will require patience, compromise, and a willingness to listen to each other's perspectives. it will also require strong leadership from both sides. Section 9. Choosing peace, a shared responsibility. The future of our planet depends on our ability to prevent war between nuclear-armed superpowers. This is not just the responsibility of governments, it is a shared responsibility. We must all do our part to promote peace, understanding, and cooperation. We must reject the rhetoric of hatred and division, and we must demand that our leaders choose diplomacy over conflict. The stakes are simply too high to do anything less.